Hello everyone, this is me Harper from supermaster.com and welcome back to another book review. Today I'm going to be reviewing George R.R. Martin's Fevre Dream. And you thought I was going to review the Game of Thrones series. No. Fevre Dream happens to be perhaps my favourite George R.R. Martin story. Now, as magnificent and sprawling as his Song of Ice and Fire novels are, and can hopefully continue to be, I find that Fevre Dream is perhaps Martin at his most laid back, but also at his most masterful. Allow me to explain. So, Fevre Dream essentially is about vampires on a steamboat. Very straightforward, right? Very straightforward and very, very cool. But what really does set this book apart from the sheer imagination of the story and Martin's excellent writing, is that it gives another swing, if you will, on the done-over vampire genre. In this book, the vampires are sort of other beings. They were born with their affliction. They were born with the thirst of human blood, but they're also completely autonomous. They're not simply driven by instinct. When they're first born, they do have the bloodlust, but they have the emotional and mental capacity to forego that and try to find a way to get around it, essentially. So what takes place in this book is that Joshua York, a vampire, commissions the assistance of Abner Marsh, a human steamboat designer. Now, Abner Marsh has had a hell of a time because his last few steamers have been lost, essentially, in the river has basically frozen over and it has ruined his ships. So he is on financial dire straits at the moment. So Joshua York comes to Abner Marsh and proposes that he builds another steamboat, just sparing no expense, putting all of his effort into the architecture and the structure of the boat. So Marsh is a very sort of wily bloke. He's not unpleasant, but he's a very sort of rough, salt-of-the-earth type of person. And at first, he's very hesitant about, Joshua York, because Joshua York is a very sort of upstanding and very classy and very soft-spoken individual. But as time goes on, Josh and Abner form a remarkable friendship. And that's another cool thing. You have a relationship between a vampire and a human that is not romantic. It is purely platonic. Joshua admires Abner's ingenuity. He admires the man himself. And Abner comes to respect Joshua York as a person. And when he eventually finds out about Joshua, finds out about his vampirism and just how different he truly is, he doesn't have a knee-jerk reaction because he's come to know this man very, very well. And it's a nice little change on a genre that's been, to hell and back, essentially. But on with the rest of the review here. Fevre Dream moves at a very swift pace. As wonderful and sprawling as the Song of Ice and Fire is, it's got a lot of irrelevant details and fluffery behind it. Like you'll have, Martin going into detail about these royal houses that actually have no bearing on the rest of the plot. Very, very detailed, don't get me wrong, and very well researched. But in Fevre Dream, Martin conveys the essential information, such as particular character traits, what they do, how they're dressed, what they're eating. Martin is very particular about incorporating what a character eats in any of his books, because he has said in the past that what a person is eating reflects the circumstances that they may be finding themselves in or what they're currently in. And it's kind of cool because, well, look, I love food. I love reading about these little culinary delights that Martin likes to put forth. And it's a nice little touch because it doesn't come across as irrelevant. There is a reason for everything in Fevre Dream, and I feel that's what really makes it work. It doesn't bother giving you all this excess information that really has no bearing on the rest of the plot. as I said, they're really cool and interesting characters, but also going back to how the vampires are, being other, the way I read it is that they're kind of aliens. They don't come from our planet. They don't follow the rules of Earth's nature. So they have come from another completely different place, and they have settled on our planet. And they've been observing us, and they have been more or less been seeing us as cattle, but it's a very complicated but really cool insight about what vampires can be if a writer is willing to be inventive about it. There's plenty of red stuff in this book. It's not blow-by-blow bloodfest, but when there is violence, when there is gore and some seriously messed up stuff happening, Martin knows how to write it. It's very concise, it's very clear, and you do not mistake anything of what's happening. It's like really, really visceral, and I love it. The observation of the time period, I'm sorry, I don't know my American history, so if any of you out there are more in touch with American history or just history in general, please leave a note below and just, chastise me on my my lack of information. But as per with A Song of Ice and Fire, Martin likes to know the period that he's writing for. He likes to create a universe built on some sort of factual basis, and the steamboat bayou culture of, say, the 1800s or something like that, it's very spot on, because he makes these observations and he is sure to put them in the text. And once again, it is not irrelevant. When Martin is writing about the construction of the Fevre Dream, of the steamboat that York has commissioned Abner to make, it's very to the point, and it gives you a completely clear mental picture about what this ship looks like. It gives you a very clear indication about the world around it. It establishes a universe and a dimension. It's really, really good. Now, I personally don't find any fault with this book, but as I was saying about the observation of the historical period, this was when slavery was still common, right? So you have two villainous characters. One is a master vampire known as Damon Julian, who for some reason I saw as Willem Dafoe when I first read it, and Sour Billy Tipton, who is a human servant who has been afflicted by the pox, and he's very, very ugly and just yuck. And, when we first meet Surly Bill, Sour Billy, he is at a slave market. He's selecting all these beautiful young nubile slave girls to give to Julian to feed on. And this goes out through the book, like, slavery is inescapable, okay? This is something that was a part of American history. It happened, and I do not find it acceptable when people are trying to brush it under the rug as if it never happened. I know how strange it is for you to see me saying that, because I'm a white person and I've had privileges, but to deny something that historically happened and shaped a country and shaped the people who live in it, just ignoring it as if it never happened, that to me is more offensive than like addressing it full on. And that's what Fevre Dream does. It doesn't gloss over the ugliness of this. It doesn't ignore the tyranny of this mindset, of this society that had built itself around the subjugation of others. And I can understand that if people are particularly sensitive to this, they may not like the story, but Martin isn't writing this to be offensive. He is not writing Fevre Dream in order to make you deliberately upset. This was a fact of life, and you can say, vampires are figures of fantasy, but here's the thing, this still has some bearing in history. This isn't Martin setting the story on a completely different planet in another completely different universe. This is taking part on Earth. And yeah, it's just, it wisely chooses not to gloss over the ugly reality of the time. And truth be told, it adds far more dimension to this novel than just like going completely off the rails in terms of fantasy. So, all of that said, I give Fevre Dream a 5 out of 5. It is perhaps, as I said, one of Martin's best works. We haven't seen all of the Song of Ice and Fire, and hopefully Martin will deliver it before his watch ends. But for my money, I would love if more people got to read this book. Not only vampire fans, but fans of horror and historical fiction in general. I think you guys could have a really good time with this. So well written, so interesting, and just so damn good. Okay, everybody. Thank you once again for listening to me, and as usual, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye bye now.